We are supposed to be a neutral country. But the way in which the government are articulating their position on the dangerous brinkmanship and escalation that's going on between two major military political blocs, NATO on the one hand and Russia on the other, would suggest that for the government at least, there's no question of being neutral. There's no question of being objective in this, but that the Irish government is taking sides. Ironically, the government suggests, but obviously the Taoiseach doesn't understand, certainly our position, the position of socialists on this, suggests that we're reluctant to criticise Russia. Right. You really don't listen, do you? Let me just put it as boldly as I possibly can. Putin is a thug, an autocratic, nasty, militarist, imperial-looking regime. Okay? I just finished. Just to put to bed. No. I didn't interrupt you or the Taoiseach, right? Just to put to bed the nonsense that you come out with. Now, I can't put it more boldly. You wouldn't put it as boldly as that. We were out criticising what the Russians were doing in Kazakhstan last week, and there's not much action from the government. I stood on many a protest over what the Russians did, the carnage the Russians inflicted on Chechnya, and I didn't see you lot there. So please don't try and confuse the issue. The problem is, while I absolutely object to the Russians massing troops on the Ukrainian border, to the whole nature of the regime, or for that matter, doing military exercises in the Irish maritime area, not a word about the NATO military exercise on the 24th of January in the Mediterranean. Not a word. No criticism of that military exercise, with NATO flexing its muscles. The first time since the end of the Cold War that an entire US aircraft carrier fleet came under NATO control. Right? What are they doing there? Except ratcheting up the tensions. The Russians are massing troops on the Ukrainian border. They shouldn't be doing it. The Americans are planning to send troops into Ukraine and are arming the Ukrainians, as are many of the NATO powers, notably Germany not. But many European powers are arming them with weapons that Russia, as much as I criticise them, have a reason to be concerned about. The eastward expansion of NATO that James Baker promised at the time would not happen. That promise was broken. And NATO has expanded aggressively, encircling Russia, inevitably provoking an escalation of political and military tensions. Not a word of that from the government. No balance in the criticism. So that's why I say that you are not being neutral in this, objective. You know, if you go to some of the world's media outlets who haven't got a particular axe to grind for one side or the other, they're objective in their assessment of what's going on. We're not. Why? Because the Irish political establishment have always, in truth, wanted to facilitate the US bloc, the US-led Western bloc, as they do at Shannon Airport, allowing them to prosecute the utterly disastrous wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, where hundreds of thousands of people were slaughtered in Iraq, and we facilitated, where we facilitated the kidnap and torture program that is US rendition. And Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael and some of their coalition partners stood over that and allowed that to happen and continue to allow it to happen. They want to sign us up to PESCO when the European military project being pushed is all about deepening the integration with NATO, which is a first strike military nuclear alliance. Now just think about that. They have a policy of the first strike use of nuclear weapons against states that don't have nuclear weapons. That's actually policy of NATO. We should be railing against that kind of stuff. So let's actually uphold the shattered tradition of neutrality and call this out for what it is. This is two nasty, expansionist, military political alliances, big power alliances, and neutrality means calling them both out and calling for people to step back from the brink of war, to demilitarise that area, to de-escalate it, and to say that weapons, putting them in, military advisors, troops from either side are not acceptable and are adding fuel to the fire.